Remember last year's amazing trip? That cute first birthday party? All those photos, all those memories can be freed from your phone with a Shutterfly photo book. Rediscover and share your favorite moments with those you love. You'll be amazed how easy it is to make a photo book with Shutterfly and enjoy it for years to come. Get 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
I really like this film, and I was surprised actually how well it has aged.
There's so many nice elements to it though, and the romance and stuff I think is nicely done, and Whoopi Goldberg really does steal the show, and she's a powerhouse in that movie.
Turns out she had a 1-year-old baby at the time. So the fact that she looks like she's had zero sleep and is on the brink of crying all the time makes complete sense. Their on-screen chemistry is really good. And neither of them kind of overact. They're sort of understated but quite real performances, I think.
Behaviour like this was not allowed in the pottery class that I went on.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Today we're joined by Jim.
Hello.
And Giles.
Hello.
And Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about that film that popularised the Righteous Brothers, Ghost.
Thank you as always to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello and welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Joining us remotely today we have Jim and Giles. If you would like to say hello and tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Go on, Jim, you go first.
Thanks, man. This is why we work so well together. I'm Jim Daly. I'm a stand-up comedian and podcaster and writer, and whatever pays money, I will do. And Giles and I do a podcast together called The Blank Podcast, which I'll let him explain.
Well, my name is Giles Paley-Phillips. Yeah, I'm a writer by trade, and then, become a podcast in the last few years, obviously working with Jim on The Blank Podcast, a podcast which I guess is about blank moments in life. You know, there's difficult moments, and we talk to well-known guests about those difficult moments creatively or just in life in general. And the podcast has kind of evolved over the last few years, and we talk about all sorts of different things, including like imposter syndrome, public failure, social anxiety, all these different things. The kind of we're sort of researching the human condition for it a little bit, I guess.
And I think it's good to connect with those, as you say, well-known people, because it helps to kind of resonate with other people who feel, oh shit, if they've got imposter syndrome, then it kind of normalizes it in a way, I think.
Oh, massively, yeah, totally. I mean, that's the one of the brilliant. I think Jim and I, when we started the podcast, I think Jim was having struggles getting back on stage you had sort of stage fright, I think, didn't you, for the stand-up stuff? And I was going through sort of writer's block, my end, and we wanted to talk to other creatives, really. That kind of was the sort of start of it. And then it's kind of, like I say, it's kind of evolved into different things. So it very much started as a kind of creative podcast, like looking at creativity, and has changed into, as it's sort of morphed into this, like I say, the human condition, and being able to talk to well-known people and people that we admire massively, and finding out that actually we're all so similar in our outlooks, and we all have the same neurosis and anxieties about things, then that's so nice and comforting for us, isn't it?
I know. Yeah. I remember. I think when we met, because we met briefly at London Podcast the British Podcast Awards a couple of years ago. And I'd been listening to your podcast, and one of the guests at the time that really struck me was Ben Bailey-Smith, aka Doc Brown.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of his, and I'd seen him perform stand up before coming on with Ricky Gervais. So in front of like 10,000 stage arena. And I'd heard about him more recently from being on Wittertainment, being on the Oda Mae podcast. And I always kind of thought, well, what's he? I'm not seeing any of his stand-up recently. And it was good to sit here in that show, that episode with yourselves, that he was just saying, you know what, I didn't fancy the life of stand-up, even though he was doing well and he was getting booked. And like Michael McIntyre was like, holy shit, you're going gangbusters. But for him, it just wasn't what he wanted to do. And that's good to know for other people. You don't feel, you know, some people see on the path of success doesn't necessarily mean that's the path for you. And for him, he was very candid about saying, no, I don't want to do that. So it's a great show. It's a great podcast for those kind of reasons.
Thanks very much. Yeah, and without obviously trying to dominate this podcast too much, talk about ours instead. It's been Giles and I have learned a lot. I think, you know, he has said we had our own struggles. I was struggling to do stand up, and we've learned a lot from our guests. And in the last 2 years, I've probably done 5 stand up gigs. So, guys, I'm progressing. You know, we're getting there. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Well, as you did say, we are here to talk about films rather than podcasts. But it's always good to plug where you guys come from.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
No, that's part. You know, that's part of the love here. We're here to talk about Ghost, which is your choice, Jim. So, can you tell us first of all why you chose it, and give us a synopsis in less than a minute?
Wow. Okay. Now I feel like I've got pressure on me, and I really hope no one's timing it.
Why did 10 seconds there?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Why did that? Okay, I'll do why did I pick?
You can explain it. You can tell you why you picked in a bit more time, but the synopsis has to be less than a minute. That gives relieves a bit more pressure.
Okay. All right. Let me do the synopsis first, because I have written a synopsis down here, but I didn't realize I had a minute, because all I've written is Ghost helps girlfriend revenge his death, which now that I read that back, that sounds way more sinister than I think actually the movie is supposed to be. But essentially, that's kind of what it is. So there's this guy. He's a banker. I think he's a banker. He's like he wears suits and does important stuff.
And it's the 80s, so it was like
the 80s. Yeah,
power suit, wasn't it? Power suit.
Yes.
And they have not aged well. Those suits at all. They look poor.
Or that haircut.
Haircut, I'm not too against, but I think the suits look awful. He gets murdered. Well, he dies. It turns out he gets murdered, but he dies. Then he becomes a ghost, which obviously is clues in the title, and he works out that he's been murdered, and then returns to save his girlfriend. I think his girlfriend or fiance. They're not married. I don't think.
They're not. No,
it's never really explicitly.
It is actually.
She kind of said, "Let's get married," and he was like,
just before he bites the bullet, she says, "Well, I think we should get married."
That's very true. And then he doesn't. He doesn't say anything.
And he says, "Oh, ditto."
Yeah, which turns out not an acceptable way to accept a marriage proposal. And so anyway, and then he comes back to try and save his girlfriend. I think during the course of that, he actually puts his girlfriend in more danger than she probably was by his own vengeful spirit to get back at his former work colleague personally. And then a spiritual healer, I'm not quite sure what we'd call Whoopi Goldberg. Psychic medium turns up. Yeah. I mean, steals the show, let's be totally honest, and helps him save his girlfriend and in cold blood kill 2 people. And that's essentially it.
And so why did you choose that cold-blooded film?
Because I love movies about the paranormal where they kill people in cold blood. That's also got a bit of a romantic and comedy element to it.
What other films are in that genre? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of any others.
Jurassic Park. There's murder in that, kind of, from animals to
T-Rexes. So why did you? Okay, well. You said before we started recording you were pleasantly surprised, or you were surprised at how much you enjoyed it. So why did you say that?
Did you pick a film you thought would be bad on purpose, or maybe is your memory a little bit hazy? Or
Helen, I pick a lot of things in my life that I think would be bad on purpose just to see what happens, because that's the sort of person I am.
You like to watch the world burn.
I think I picked Ghost actually because it's on that list, and I've got a long list of movies that I need to see, and it's never expanding list for me.
Had you never seen this before?
I'd not seen Ghost before.
Oh wow!
I don't think so. I don't think this is the other thing that I was slightly worried about coming on this podcast, because my memory. This is also a really bad thing as stand-up comedian. My memory is absolutely awful. So trying to go back and talk explicitly and in detail about movies that I'd seen, even if it was 2 days ago, I thought would be a struggle for me. So I'm just putting that out there now in case at some point I completely forget what I'm talking about. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good, and I thought it was a very it merged a lot of different themes. And maybe we'll come on to this later because I did a bit of research into the director and the screenwriter and stuff. But it's weirdly, I think, I know we joked about it a minute ago, one of those movies that actually isn't quite in any genre. It is a drama, but it's also got comedy elements, and it's a rom-com in a way. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't actually think many movies, apart from Jurassic Park, obviously, actually tick all those boxes.
It's interesting you saying about the director, because the director's Jerry Zucker, who did like Airplane and Top Secret. So like out and out hit comedies. Yeah. And then did quite a weird film, like quite weird for him, I think, like as a movie, like it's quite a direction change for him.
Would you like to hear a quote from the screenwriter?
I'd love to hear a quote from
this is Giles. I never do this much research for our podcast. This is unheard of for me.
I know. It's
called a guy called Bruce. That's not a name. I mean, it might be a name in America, but anyway, Bruce Joel Rubin. And he said, when I was told the guy who made Airplane was going to direct Ghost, I cried. So I don't know if he saw Ghost as being maybe a more serious, romantic movie or darker movie. But you have to say, and I'm guessing it's Jerry Zucker's influence, the movie zips along really nicely, and there is comedy elements to it as well. Obviously, Whoopi Goldberg's character brings that massively. And I think without those comedy bits in it, like the fart, not the fart scene, sorry, the scene in the lift, the scene in the lift where they're about having a contagious. I don't know why I've gone fart there. That already shows you the sort of element of my comedy. But the bits like that, I think, without that Ghost and those comedy elements, and without Whoopi Goldberg's character being so good, Ghost would have been an incredibly dark movie and probably not that good.
I'll just when I watched this, rewatched this for the first time, it must have been 20 years, even longer. And Jerry Zucker's name came up. I thought, I know Jerry Zucker, but it must be a different person. And as Giles rightly pointed out, I was like, yeah, this is the guy from Airplane, which is just is at complete odds with this film. And so I did check out his filmography as a director, and it was like Airplane, Top Secret, Ruthless People, which is also like a bit of a comedy farce. Then it was Ghost. And then there's First Night, which I don't know, and Rat Race, which is a comedy as well. So this is like a complete departure from what he normally does. But, I think it's great. And I don't know, in the hands of a different director, it would have been a completely different film. So it sounds like he was kind of married to it. I'd be quite interested to see how it came on his table and he decided he wanted to do it, because it doesn't seem like anything he wanted to do.
I've seen Rat Race, and it's a terrible movie.
Yeah, it's one with Rowan Atkinson having narcolepsy, isn't it?
Yeah. And I believe the theme tune or the song they've got for the end is Smash Mouth.
Yeah, it is.
Watermelon Sun, is it?
No,
they crash a Smash Mouth concert. And I tell you what, that's the most ludicrous bit in the film. Because
nothing ages a film like having Smash Mouth on the
also, the fact that Smash Mouth are clearly playing like the biggest arena in the world, and you're thinking Smash Mouth would never play. They'd never fill this place.
What's it? Jim, why hadn't you watched Ghost before then?
I don't know. I'm not a particularly organised person. There's lots of movies that I want to see that I haven't seen. I'm the sort of person that sits down for an hour on my phone on Twitter and then afterwards thinks, I've got no time to watch movies. So I do really need to reorganise my life. I don't think Ghost was particularly a movie that I wanted to see. I think it's a movie that I thought I should see, or that's one of those ones that's on lists that you should.
Oh, you thought it was like a broccoli film where people said, you should watch this and Schindler's List and like. Yeah.
It's won awards. I mean, Whoopi Goldberg won an award for this. Did she win an Oscar for this? I think
it also won best screenplay, I think, as well.
Yeah, it won two, I think.
Winner, yeah,
and it got nominated for Best Picture. I mean, I don't know what else was around that year.
I'll do some digging and get back to you.
1990. I'm going to guess Waterworld, something like that.
It feels like 1990. They like I don't know I wonder if it's one of those years where a bit like in 1977 when Rocky won Best Picture and Taxi Driver clearly should have won, whether there was some other sort of films that sort of flew under the radar that were absolutely amazing.
I will look out. Let's keep chatting. So Helen and Giles, had you seen this before, and what were your thoughts when Jim said, I'm going to do Ghost?
I've seen this loads. it's one of those films that kind of a couple of years after it came out, it's basically like this, and we've already done The Fugitive, were two sort of films that I don't quite know how I acquired. Maybe VHS, or I think it was just around the time we got Sky TV, and they were like the films on Sky all the time. So I've seen this film, I can't remember how many times, but I hadn't seen it in a while, and it's only recently come onto Netflix. And when I went to watch it, I remembered that as soon as it came on, I'd actually started to watch it but didn't get around finishing it. So I half went to it and sort of went from the last moment, and then actually went, no, I need to go back and watch it, because I was really getting into it. And I was like, actually, I want to do it justice and go all the way back to the start. So I really like this film, and I was surprised actually how well it has aged. I thought it would be pretty like, ooh, not sure about it, but it's aged really well. But like you said, it's really bizarre because it is quite funny. It's really romantic. I had a little bit of teary eye in some of the moments. But yeah, it's really dark at times as well. And it also reminds me that there must have been kind of a thing when there was like the 90s, the early 90s, late 80s, like Beetlejuice and there's a couple of other films really into death and the afterlife. And it's just kind of like a subgenre that was really, really done with death and people dying and what might happen if you died, which we don't really have anymore. I don't know why, but...
Just before going over to yourself, Giles, so 1990 was the Academy Awards, and Whoopi was up against Annette Bening for The Grifters, which was a great film. Lorraine Bracco for Goodfellas.
Oh, man.
Diane Ladd for Wild at Heart, and Mary McDonnell for Dances with Wolves. So she was mucking it with some fairly heavyweights in that. And
to be fair, it's a great performance. I mean, she's worthy of it.
Yeah, no doubt. But it's certainly, but the point there is certainly wasn't a fallow year in terms of nominations. This is a decent year for films.
So what won Best Picture in 1990?
Must be Dances with
what was
Wolves,
the Best Picture?
Yeah, Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves. That won like 11.
I was getting that confused with Waterworld, which in hindsight, two very different movies.
Yeah, so for me, I haven't seen Dances with Wolves. Dances with Wolves is one of my broccoli pictures where I think, it's just very long, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about 8 hours.
There's not enough wolves in it, I'll tell you that.
There's not dancing here either.
If you're expecting actual wolves dancing, Kobe, I'm going to let you know now. There are no wolves dancing.
I really wasn't. So, Giles, sorry, what are your thoughts on Ghost?
Well, again, I think I hadn't seen it for a long time, and actually I'd totally forgotten it. Watching it, rewatching it, it's literally the pottery scene, which is, again... ironically,
very early on, so
it
like
does. You think it's
like
going to be later,
in.
Yeah, and also I think that was ridiculed in one of the Naked Gun movies, which I think is a Jerry Zucker kind of production. So he's sort of parodied his own work quite nicely there. I thought that was
then. Yeah,
amazing.
There's a brilliant scene. I think Leslie Nielsen's doing with Victoria Presley, and then there's like 8 or 9 hands going around the thing. But yeah, and those scenes are actually very beautiful, and I like the concept of like sort of seeing your own afterlife. I think that the idea of that, I'd like to have seen more of that, actually, that kind of, and actually dealing with the loss of your own life, and sort of overhearing conversations at the funeral and stuff like that. I thought that stuff was nicely done, but I think actually I kind of wanted even more of that sort of stuff. And I think sometimes actually the plot, the actual sort of thriller element of it, I thought sometimes got in the way of the drama of the relationship and that stuff, which I would have liked to have seen more of that kind of stuff. Wanted to really buy into, find out more about her character a little bit more and all that stuff. So sometimes I thought that we got a bit muddied with the plot, but I mean, it's an entertaining film. It's enjoyable. It wasn't. I didn't hate it in any way whatsoever. I enjoyed watching it. But I
ring an endorsement.
I know they can stick that on the poster. But no, I thought there's so many nice elements to it though, and the romance and stuff I think is nicely done, and the performances are good. And we've alluded to it already. Whoopi Goldberg really does steal the show, and she's a powerhouse in that movie.
On the pottery scene, I have thoughts.
Sure. So had you been aware of this pottery scene before you'd seen this film?
So I think possibly maybe why why I was put off maybe from watching it, because I think if you only knew Ghost from the pottery scene, you'd assume it was just a mushy rom-com. And it's way more than that. And Helen's right. Like, it came on really early in the movie. I had it in my head that the pottery scene was her doing pottery, making out with him as a ghost for some reason.
Me too.
Yes. Now, is that because
that would be weird?
I remembered it. I thought it was going to be. It was going to flash. It was going to. Suddenly they were going to cut, and it was Whoopi Goldberg behind her doing all the
I
stuff.
thought something like that, or then it happened early. I thought, it's going to happen again later on, and we're going to get it again as a ghost, and now he can feel people. It's all going to make sense.
I had exactly the same, Jim. Exactly the same.
So I was a bit disappointed.
I'd forgotten it wrong.
The thing about the pottery scene that makes me most angry and anxious is that I'm a bit of a clean freak, and when I saw their hands getting all covered in pottery stuff, I couldn't deal with it, and I just wanted them to really wash their hands like as soon as
so you wanted the scene because they did really wash their hands, because I was like, that's going to be gross, because I knew where it was going and I hadn't seen it for 20 years, but I did look at the hands and they were clean. So there was a scene in the long edit, in the director's cut, where they do wash their hands 20 seconds at least.
But I had to go back. I thought the same thing. I had to go back, and they cut to her holding him, and she's got clean hands. And I was like, "It didn't." You're right. Something's been cut. It didn't make sense at all. That really, really unsettled me. That and the dirty hands.
That deleted scene is somewhere, Jim, of them washing their hands thoroughly,
stopping all the love stuff, and just like, sorry guys, we need to just get our hands nice, safety first, and then carrying on with the love making. But so that upset me.
Upset is quite a strong feeling for it.
It's kind of like sex scenes in films go. I mean, it's sort of a sex scene. Generally, they're not
just
very
start on this, Helen, because you know how to potter, so you've got some insight on this. So,
I mean, behaviour like this was not allowed in the pottery class that I went on. It's really hard actually to use a wheel. And she actually took pottery classes when she was preparing for the role, so that it would be authentic. But I mean, it's hazardous. But as scenes like this go in films, I think it is one of the sexiest without being cheesy. And forget like clean hands, clay hands, because you don't want to get clay in your private parts. Because when it dries as well, it will dry and stick to all your hairs and things like that. So you don't want that. But as a piece of erotica on film, I think it's pretty good. And I'd kind of forgotten that, their on-screen chemistry is brilliant. And apparently Demi Moore was only really cast partly because she could cry out of both eyes on Will. And they make like a really... I genuinely believe in their relationship, and this was the 90s, pretty sexy stuff. None of like stuff we get these days. That's not very sexy.
So Demi Moore, I think she's fantastic in this. By the way, I think she's absolutely brilliant. And you're right. She spends, I would say, 80% of the movie crying. Like she's basically just crying on screen for the whole thing. And my wife, who watched it with me, Miranda, as well, we did a bit of research as we were watching it. It turns out she had a 1-year-old baby at the time. So the fact that she looks like she's had zero sleep and is on the brink of crying all the time makes complete sense. Because I also have an 11-month-old baby, so I completely understand. So good research for playing that kind of role. But she is, I mean, she's really, really, really good in this. And you're right, their on-screen chemistry is really good. And neither of them kind of overact it. They're sort of understated but quite real performances, I think, and I guess that adds to the chemistry on screen. But I do think Demi Moore was brilliant, and she looks really young. I think she's like 28, 29 when they do this, but I thought she was in her early 20s. She looks really young, and apparently the haircut, the sort of quite boyish haircut, set a trend after this movie. Well done to her.
Well, I want to talk a bit about Whoopi and your man Carl before we go into the scores. So I can't. This is one of the films where I don't know why, but my parents went to see it, and it was a 12 at the time, and they were like, "We really like this film. You guys," and now I was 10, and we really like this film, but we think you guys would watch it. My brother's 9 at the time, and we just had one of the few like official VHSs that wasn't recorded off the TV that we had. So we just used to absolutely rinse this. And this rewatch for me was super enjoyable. Just, and like I said, I haven't watched it for 20 years, but all his memories coming back, and being at home watching my parents, watching my kids, watching my brothers. But I do remember a lot of the things that happened, even incidental stuff, and even like the bank number. When he said it, I was like, oh yeah, that's the bank account number that
Wow.
for the thing. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but 10 years old, I didn't know what this was, but I just watched it so many times. But for me, it was all about Whoopi Goldberg in this, and also Carl being one of the most hissable villains in cinema history, which is also fantastic. But Whoopi for me was like brilliant, and watching it as an adult now, she's just absolutely fantastic, absolutely from start to finish. And some of the things we used to laugh at the way she did, like when she's playing around, she can't see him. We used to laugh at that as a kid, but that must be such a really hard thing to do as an actor, and do that convincingly, to have someone in the same room and you can look at them, but pretend that you can't see them. And that's, that's great. Even that's a little subtle thing.
She's great in it, and Swayze wanted her, so he only signed on after he got her. And I think it's just more the comedic timing is so good. Like the thing that I remember the most is where she's got the check at the end, and she won't let go of it with the nuns, and that whole scene where she's in the bank and she's not signing her right name. Yeah. It's so funny, and it's such a perfect, and I absolutely love all of her outfits in this one as well.
She's amazing. I mean, the bits where she's being possessed by other people in her body early on in her shop, and then sort of Patrick Swayze, that must be incredible. I mean, I'm a very, 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 very poor actor who sometimes gets put up for advert castings and flunks all of them. And those are not difficult castings. This must be an incredibly, incredibly difficult role to do. And she's brilliant. And it's the sort of role that if it had been cast wrong, I think it would have ruined the whole movie. Absolutely. And they got it absolutely right with her. I mean, she's just absolutely fantastic.
So it could have fallen apart in so many different ways. With Jerry Zucker, I don't know how he directed her. Maybe she just went, I'm going to do it, mate. Don't worry about it. To be fair, though, the films like Top Secret and Airplane must be super difficult to direct, because you know exactly what you're going for, and it has to be played deadpan or slapstick, and they must be able to oscillate between the two.
Well, I think yeah, sorry, Kobe. I was going to say, I think Airplane was a homage to a disaster movie, wasn't it? I think, and they did play it. I think they almost they sort of paralleled the script a little bit, so it was played, very straight, and that's why they got the kind of actors they got in. I think for that. Yeah,
I can't remember the name of the film, but you can go on YouTube and put Airplane Versus, and it plays this film side by side with Airplane.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, Karen.
No, I was going to say, and I think that's, like you say, you're on very strict kind of guidelines with that, very much so. And I think he had a bit more freedom with Ghost. It felt like they were trying. It looked like he was trying different things as well. There's obviously the bits where the sort of I guess the not demons, but the sort of dark angels, the sort of shadows, like coming and taking away the souls to hell. That was quite risky doing something like that. And I think those sort of moments he did sort of pull them off, I think.
What do you reckon? I thought one thing was really well done in this was when particularly Patrick Swayze died, and also the Willie Lopez died. When Patrick Swayze dies and you see a gunshot and then you see him running after him. Well, I mean, Jim, for the first time for yourself, what do you think had happened at that point?
Well, because you know he's going to die, so you think, he must be dead, and then you see him running off after the mugger, and you think, this isn't the bit where he dies, and he is. I thought that was done really, really well. That's beautifully done. Just on the demons, because I know this movie was made in I guess 1989. I'm guessing it was out in 1990. I mean, the CGI is really, it dates it so much, especially those demons. They look like the sort of things I'd like you to draw in my school book during chemistry when I was really bored.
But the sound, though. The sound is horrifying.
It's still really scary.
It out of me as a kid when I watched it the first time.
I think it's still scary. I mean, I'm easily scared now anyway, but I think it's still scary. So even though the graphics are rubbish and this is a 30-year-old movie, if you go with it, then it still has the effects I think that you want. It's the same when he's in scenes with himself, Patrick Swayze, and you can see one of them's clearly on blue screen or green screen or something, and it's like Back to the Future, his hands going through stuff. But if you go with it, I think the movie is so good that you can still buy it, even though the CGI graphics are like my old sort of MS DOS.
Yeah, I think knowing that it was that long ago, and realizing that the special effects weren't going to be top notch. We're used to such great things now with CGI. So I think, like you say, it was more the concepts I thought were interesting. Those kind of concepts, I think, were the thing that
so many movies now rely on CGI. So many movies wouldn't be good now if the CGI wasn't so good. But this movie has all the other elements to it, so it doesn't matter. Although I guess at the time they probably thought it was groundbreaking.
Carl, the hissable villain. This is the thing, you have to have a worthy protagonist. You have to have a great antagonist, and I think he was just
proper bastard.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, he's a banker, so I mean that's one good thing Patrick Swayze did, was like give us
with a drug problem.
Yeah, well, Patrick Swayze made us like empathise for bankers. Maybe he had to die for that to happen, which is a bit harsh. But Carl was like, you just hated him from the start.
Yeah, well, likewise, even the bit in the, which is supposed to be light-hearted in the lift, and obviously you mentioned it earlier, Jim, like it's been, that sort of slightly comedic bit. But actually, I thought, he seems like a bit of a snide bastard. I don't know, there's something about him. I think he's up to no good, because I've kind of forgotten some of the plot anyway. And yeah, my instincts were correct about him.
He apparently he nearly didn't get cast. He only got cast because his wife was working on the production team or something at the time, and she was like, badger your agent to get like a casting for this. And they liked him. They thought he was talented, but they thought he was too nice, the actor. And they thought he wouldn't be able to play a bastard, as Giles says, and he does it really well. I really liked the bit when Sam discovers the money in the account, too much money, and he said it to Carl, and you can see the look in Carl's face when he realizes, oh shit, and that's when you realize, oh okay, right, so it's him that's obviously doing the money and stuff. I thought that was a really nice look and a really nice scene.
Well, I like the bit where he said, so what are you guys doing tonight? We should hang out, and he's, I'm going to take Molly to the Macbeth. Yeah. And you could just see, okay, perfect. We're gonna Bruce Wayne your ass.
Exactly.
I like the bit where he's basically being terrorized by the ghost, and it's just kind of like having a massive sweat panic when he realizes that the 4 million's gone, and Patrick Swayze can like duff him up as a ghost. It's like revenge.
Yeah, well, I do think that's an amazing scene. I do think that, as I said earlier, Patrick Swayze's character is almost driven by revenge too much. Like, I think he actually does put Molly in more danger by being so desperate to screw up Sam's money things with the drug. There's a bit, no, sorry, not Sam, Carl. There's a bit where Carl answers the phone right before the deadline for the 4 million to go, and he says the drug baron's name. He says the mafia guy's name. You notice that? What a giveaway! Don't say his name. That's so obvious. But yeah, I think he thought he was fantastic. So well done to him.
Well, I watched The Last Samurai recently, and the same actor, can't remember his name, played
from Ghost.
The guy Carl from Ghost. I think he's called Tom something. Tom Gold. I'm not going to say it because I don't know. But he plays a really snidey character in that as well. And I think he's got a bit of form. So I think he got a bit of a taste for playing those types of characters with Ghost. So no more Mr. Nice Guy, Jim. I think he's taken. Yeah, he likes the nasty characters for sure.
On that, guys, let's head to the scores.
Hello, I'm Sam Pay.
And I'm Martin Zoltz-Orstwick.
And we are the two hosts of a podcast called
Song by Song,
where we listen every week to a track by the musical artist Tom Waits. You might know him for his gravelly voice. Very nice. His appearance in films, but also his multi-decade spanning career involving blues, jazz, and all sorts of other kinds of experimental music.
So we're basically like a book club for Tom Waits, and if that sounds like your cup of tea, you can find us at songbysongpodcast.com or wherever you get podcasts.
So,
imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
welcome to the Spreadsheet of Dreams. all of our Flixwatcher scores are out of 5. You may have decimal places if you wish, and we will start with you, please, Jim, with your recommendability.
As I said earlier, I may have been a bit generous with these scores because
they're not official until they come out of your mouth, so you can recalibrate if you wish.
Oh no!
Think about it.
Once it's written down,
what we've
Cody,
said.
Once it's written on my notes, I have to say it. I'm looking at my score here, and I think I'm going to go with it. I unsurprisingly, now I'm sure you've guessed, I put 5 for recommendability, and I don't know if on your previous podcast 5 is like a common score or ridiculously high scored. But I put 5 for recommendability. If someone said to me, "Would you recommend Ghost to another person?" I would, and to me that's a 5.
Giles,
I'm not quite as generous as Jim. I've given it about just slightly above average 3.
Oh, okay. By the way, you can have decimal places here, so if you
Like a 3.1, a 3.3, a 3.5.
Can I change my score to 5.5?
no, because it's out 5 is maximum.
All right.
But you try. No, I'm going to stick with 3. Is that a bit harsh? Am I being harsh? Because I don't
your
feel,
scores. It's whatever you.
yeah, I don't feel. No, I feel it feels. I feel like 3 is a good is where I am at with it. You see, when I was watching it, when I finished, I thought this is a 3.
Helen,
So I've been thinking about this, and I wanted to also say that Kobe, it was the most rented VHS of 1991. So you were part of that stat rewatching your.
no, we didn't rent it. My parents bought it from
bought it.
Yeah, you bought it on VHS.
Wow, you invested.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's was one of our few VHSs that we had.
Oh,
That and The Lion King and Little Mermaid.
Oh my god, I watched Little Mermaid this afternoon.
Great.
There you go.
I need to watch. I need to rewatch that because we've got Disney Plus and things like that are just exactly what we need to watch. So Helen, sorry.
Ghost. I really enjoyed watching this as much as I did when I used to watch it all those times back in the 90s. And the CGI is probably a little bit sketchy these days. And it is really bizarre to have a romantic film intertwined with like a thriller / film about death with a ghost and all of that comedy. But it sort of all works. And I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And I think, like you, if anyone said, I've never seen Ghost, should I watch it? I'm like, yes, definitely you should. And yeah, I'm going to go 5. There's no one that I wouldn't recommend it to.
Yes.
I'm going to go for 5 as well, which is rare for me, at least in the past couple of years. Loved it as a
I'm so
kid.
invested in this. I don't know why I'm so invested, but I'm very pleased.
People get defensive when the co-guest scores something lower.
Ruined friendships.
When the co-guest says, Banag was free.
I finished it and it was a 3.
I knew it was a 3 before it even started.
I hadn't seen it for 20 years, and I don't know why. Maybe because I moved away from VHS.
It's a 3, Kobe. That's why.
Yeah, not on VHS anymore, and I didn't know it was on Netflix. But even if I had known, would I have watched it again? Probably not. But when you did select it, I was like, yeah, it's about time I watched it again. And from the very start to the end, loved it. CGI and effects in some places look really ropey. Some places were more than passable. So to be honest, I thought at the time, even 10 years old, I was like, that looks shit. But so there's no change. I just really enjoyed it, and thank you very much for bringing it to us. Repeat viewing score, Jim. This is your first time. Do you think you will repeat view this?
I'm 100% sure I will repeat view it. Well, that does mathematically it doesn't add up to the score I've given it actually, which is a 4. Should have been a 5.
Well, I think sure.
I would definitely watch it again at some point. And I was just about to say then, and I'll make sure my daughter watches it. But by the time she's old enough to watch it, she'll maybe a couple of years' time. So maybe it'll be 34 years. It is timeless, yeah. But it'll be 34 years old. But no, I think I'll definitely watch it again at some point. Although, as I said earlier, I'm incredibly disorganized, so maybe I won't.
Giles,
well, I would watch it again, and I'm slowly sort of trying to educate my kids with films, and we're slowly going through. we're going through the 80s at the moment. We've done Karate Kid recently and Short Circuit and a few
How old are
others.
your kids? Sorry.
They're 13 and 11.
Okay.
So they're probably still a little bit young for Ghost, but I probably wouldn't hesitate in letting them watch it when they're a bit older.
Well, like I said, my parents let me watch it when I was 10. But they did also let me watch RoboCop when I was 7, but that was after pestering.
Man, RoboCop's pretty. It's got some. I mean, the death at the beginning is pretty full on. Well, it's good that you've turned out so nicely.
Now, how can you gauge that through a TV screen? But yeah, sorry.
No. I was going to say. So actually, I would give it. I'll give it a 4.
Okay. Helen.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with a 4. I've really enjoyed watching it, and as I said, I've seen it loads, too many times to remember. And if someone said to me this week, "Oh, I'm going to watch Ghost, do you want to watch it?" I'd probably be like, "Yeah, I think I do."
Yeah, I'm going to go for 4.5 here. I think my wife, we've got a young son as well, young baby as well, Jim, who's just under 5 months now. So I've been watching this in like fits and starts whenever I can grab like 20 minutes or half an hour.
Yeah.
And I think my wife was a bit gutted she couldn't watch it with me. So I'd happily, if she wants to watch this weekend, I would do. And there's no reason why, because it's on something like Netflix, I think I will be happy to watch it at any time. Any time it's on, because I'm sure at some point it'll be taken off the catalogue, but it'll come back on again. But yeah, I can't see myself not watching this often for a long time.
Well, it's an easy watch. It's an easy watch, isn't it? Like an easy watch, and yet it's quite weighty at the same time. So it's not one of these movies you have to sit down for 3 hours and like really invest in it and listen to everything. You can sort of dip in and out and get the gist of it, but at the same time, there's a lot of sort of weight to it. So I think it sort of ticks a lot of boxes.
Small screen score, Jim.
Yeah. Again, I think I may have gone a bit too hard on this score. I put 5. And as we were talking, I'm thinking, well, maybe I've gone a bit too high there. The only reason I put 5 is that I think on a small screen, like a laptop or a phone, the CGI might look a bit better because it might not look as exposed as on the big screen. But then I didn't watch it on the big screen. So I don't know. That might be completely false. So I've put 5, but yeah, I don't know if I've been right there or not.
Giles.
Yeah, I think there are some cinematic moments in it for sure. There's some interesting camera work and stuff. I think it would look good on a cinema screen for sure. I mean, I think, but it doesn't. At the same time, it doesn't. I think it doesn't translate badly onto a small screen. So, yeah, I'm going to go with a 4.
Helen.
So, as it was the most rented VHS and beloved VHS of UKB, and I've only ever seen it on a TV size screen, I'm going to give it a 5 as well. I don't know what I'd get from watching it on a big screen.
Would you Prince Charles this, you reckon? If you're walking past, 2 hours?
Maybe I would, but then I was just thinking, actually, we've not actually mentioned the fact that obviously Patrick Swayze is no longer with us, and in his sort of time that he, put out a very mixed bag of films, I think it's fair to say. I was never into Dirty Dancing as a kid, and so Ghost is probably my main Patrick Swayze association, not Roadhouse, which we've had recently.
Swayze fans, you can listen to Roadhouse. Checking our back catalogue, we've done Roadhouse.
I'll just say really quickly, I think, and maybe this possibly swayed me on this one, the role that I associate Patrick Swayze most with is in Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko, I was going to say that as well. He's a sleazy teacher guy.
Yeah, for some reason that's my association with him.
Well, that's my favourite performance of his. But prior to that, Ghost was all I really knew of him. So yeah, I've only ever really seen it on a TV, and I've always really enjoyed it. So maybe a double bill with Donnie Darko at the Prince Charles would tempt me in.
Yeah, I'll go for that.
Bill. Yeah. So what's your small screen? You said 5. I'm going to go for, okay, let's go for 5. I've only ever seen it on small screen. Back in the day when it's all cathode ray tubes, from the 14-inch ones that you have in your bedroom through to the 20-inch ones that were big enough for for the lounge. Yeah, I don't think I'd Prince Charles this. But as you're saying, the special effects would look bad when blown up, especially by today's parlance. So I don't see any benefit of watching on a bigger screen, and I don't think the soundtrack was pumping enough to engage you in the theatre anymore. So 5. Engagement score, Jim.
Engagement score. Just on the soundtrack, you mentioned earlier about Righteous Brothers. Apparently, this boosted the Righteous Brothers' popularity, and that song in particular. I think it went back to number 1, and it was more successful than when the song was originally released or something. It really was big. They almost did better out of it than anyone. Although I hate that song, so that means nothing to me. Engagement score is, I've given this a 4. Although that doesn't really tally up with the rest of my scores. It probably should be a 5. But I'm going to go with a 4.
No, you do you, man.
Oh, do me. I mean, only because I'm badly engaged at everything I watch, so I'll spend half the movie on my phone anyway, which I probably did with this anyway. But I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm going to go 4.
Giles.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with going back to my recommendability score as well, I think it'd be a 3 again.
Helen, you don't have to, if you don't feel you want to explain that in any more depth, that's absolutely fine. Helen.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4 as well. It's 2 hours 7 minutes, which on paper seems quite long, but I think it just about holds your attention for about that long. And obviously, because I've seen it so many times, I obviously knew the plot, and it's not exactly a brain teaser. So I think it's kind of one of those ones that if you've seen it a couple of times, you can kind of have it on in the background and still enjoy it as equally. 4, please.
Going to go for 4.5 here. Yes, I think that's mainly for this rewatch after not seeing it for 20 years. I think subsequent rewatches will be less engagement, because I think it is something you can enjoy in the background, and when Whoopi Goldberg comes on the screen or there's a key plot point thing, you pay attention, but otherwise there's stuff that goes on in the background. But yes, that gives us an overall score of 4.31250, which is pretty decent.
That's pretty good score.
Nice.
Even with me scoring
dragging it down.
And that's not really dragging it down. So let's go to Twitter, guys. And just to remind everyone who's listening, we are at Flixwatcher Pod. And before we record, we do a shout out and say, and as in this case, we're reviewing Ghost with Jim Daly at Jim Daly Comedy and at Ellis Tender 10 from Blank Pod. Have you seen it? Tell us your thoughts and the score out of 5 stars. And we'll give you a little shout out. We had a couple of responses for this. So Jim, you go first.
Okay. So there's a reply here from Chris Olden. At Chris Olden. Whoopi Goldberg shines in this. Agreed, Chris. I think we all agree on that. Swayze's charisma carries the movie alone. A feel-good classic, 5 stars. It's almost like Chris has been listening to our episode.
And Giles, do you want to say the next one?
Yeah, we've got at Film Tip, and at Film Tip says Patrick Swayze uses Whoopi Goldberg as an elaborate erotic toy in convoluted necrophiliac sex game with wife, romantic drama. That's one way of describing it. Certainly captured the vibe of the times and a darn sight more imaginative than shiny, sad vampires. Yeah, I guess that's pretty fair.
Stop at Twilight there, it seems. I don't know why. It's fine. Guys, thank you so much for that. Can you let people know where they can find you and where they can find your podcast? And we'll say goodbye to everyone who's with us now.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for having me on. This has been fantastic. And thanks for forcing me to watch Ghost, because it was an incredibly enjoyable experience.
Technically, you forced yourself to watch Ghost.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, you can find me at Jim Daly Comedy on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, I think. Pretty much everywhere. And then Giles and I do a podcast together, the Blank Podcast, and we are at Blank Pod on all platforms as well. And Acast, I think, is best place to find us to listen.
Yeah, and you can find me on Eli's Tender on all social media places.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell him Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.